Your next 10, 15, 20 years of retirement savings, I think, has more to do with strategy and less to do with just blindly putting money in the market and hope it works out. Welcome to How to Retire on Time, a show that answers your retirement questions. Say goodbye to that oversimplified advice you've heard hundreds of times. This show is all about the nitty gritty. Now, remember, this is just a show, not financial advice. So continue doing your education or getting your education, whatever it means. Anyway, text your questions to 913 363 1234, and we'll feature them on the show. As always, David, what do we got today?
Hey, Mike, if you're 50 years old and are just starting to save for retirement, what would you do?
Just starting to save for retirement. This is more common than people realize.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the biggest misconceptions I see people make, let's do the risk first. The problem is they go all in on high risk assets. So these are true statements, okay? The S&P 500 is a great growth ETF,
Okay.
okay?
These are statements you've heard people say.
No, this is factual.
Oh, okay.
So it would have been very difficult to have a diversified portfolio that beat the S&P 500 for the last 10 to 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically just grown with a few very quick crashes, okay? And people always seem to say or want to say, financial advisors can't beat the S&P 500, and so you might as well just go all in there, all growth and blah blah blah. And kind of all true. Most financial advisors are not going to beat the S&P 500, but people forget to ask the question, well, why is that?
Yeah. Why
So,
is that?
well, yeah,
Can we ask that question
yeah,
now?
well, yeah,
Or
let's do
ask
it
it
later
later?
though. Okay.
Yeah.
So, see, these people say, well, you can't beat the S&P 500. Well, you can. You could go all into the Qs, QQQ, the Nasdaq 100. That's basically all tech. So you're less diversified. You're more concentrated. You have less stocks. So instead of 500, you've got 100 companies. That's more risk you're taking. But it has beat the S&P 500 on performance in most years, and for the last 10 to 15 years has significantly outperformed it. But let's just go back to 2000, okay? The S&P 500 over the next 3 years went down 50%, 50.
Oh,
That's not growth.
no.
That's a real market crash.
Right.
The Nasdaq 100 or the QQQ went down like 80 some percent. So when people say more growth, or more risk, more reward, that's not true. It's more risk, more potential reward, but the inverse is true, more risk or more downside exposure you should take. So that's why when people say, "Well, I'm all growth, I'm all in the S&P 500," I go, "Okay, out of ignorance, you're probably wanting to grow the assets." So the question you said, well, can we ask it? Why do financial advisors, not want to beat the S&P 500? It's not out of laziness. It's not out of selfishness for fees. If you look at a very boring cliche portfolio, stock bond, I don't agree with this portfolio, but I'm going to argue it for a second.
All right.
60-40 split from 2000 to 2010
All right.
beat the S&P 500 because over that time period, the S&P only did like around 0% total growth. But because the bond funds were doing well when the stocks weren't doing well, it was able to slowly make a reasonable return for the time. And then from 2010 to 2020, it lagged because bond funds weren't making much money, but the stocks were on a tear. But if you look at 2000 to like December 31st, 2025, and you compare just the S&P 500 to a 60-40 stock bond fund split, the 25-year period of time, they kind of did around the same performance. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Why do we think that was? Or
Well, the first 10 years, the stock bond fund mix was able to grow when the stocks weren't growing. So it got ahead.
okay.
So it had more money in the account. So it was able to compound at a better rate.
Okay.
And then eventually the S&P caught up.
All right.
But no one knows the future of the markets. So when you think of retirement, you need more predictability than high potential but high risk.
When you're young, high potential, high risk, no problem, right?
You want the markets to crash when you're 20, 30 years old
Oh, yeah.
because when it crashes, you're buying in at a discount. It's like Black Friday, everything's on sale. So you don't care. But when you're retired and you need the income, you're looking for more consistency. So a more conservative portfolio might be more appropriate because you need help preventing from the losses. Or maybe you just emotionally can't handle Wall Street roller coaster. The Wall Street roller coaster is rough. So, if that's true, then putting in the secondary market class, so the stock market and the bond market, creates more predictability because you're diversifying outside of just the stock market. Now, if you want to include real estate in there, you might actually increase your performance with decreased volatility. There's other ways you could diversify this, but the idea is just because you're trying to play catch up doesn't mean you should just take on more risk.
Ah, yes. So if you're 50 and you haven't saved anything,
That doesn't mean you go all in on the S&P 500. Does not mean that at all. Should you have a part of your portfolio in the S&P 500? Maybe.
mm,
I have no problem with that.
hmm
Probably more so on stocks or stock funds, ETFs, as opposed to cherry picking stocks. Okay, but that's the first red flag: is don't assume that more risk is more reward. It's not true, and you're looking for more predictability. Now, I would also almost encourage someone in this situation to consider not going all in the market.
oh, because that would be a little bit counterintuitive, right? Because I need to catch up, so I need to get in some more riskier stuff so I can catch up, make up for lost time. But you say no.
So make sure you have your emergency fund in place because when the markets crash, that is an opportunity for you, but you also may lose your job. The joke about, or the expression, I should say, joke is kind of a sick way to put it, but a recession is when your neighbor loses their job. A depression is when you lose your job. So you need to make sure that you're able to cover your own needs for a certain period of time. So assuming that that's been taken care of, if you look at the market today, it's arguably overvalued, which means at some point in the future, the value of the market could be less than today's price.
Mm,
So if the market for an arbitrary number is worth $100 a share for whatever the market means to you,
all right.
overvalued means at some point in the future it'll probably be worth $80 a share or $70 a share.
Uh,
No one knows. That's not promissory at all. It could be completely wrong. But there's a reasonable chance that if history repeats itself, that the market may not be as valuable in the future as it is today. So you may consider hedging your bets with other resources and not just look at buying products, which a stock is a product. A bond or bond fund is a product. It's something you're buying. It's an investment. But in my mind, I mean, it's Walmart's a product. It's a company. It's a product. It's something you can buy into. Anyway, but if you had some reserves on hand so that when the markets crashed, assuming you kept your job, you could buy in at a discount. That's a neat situation. That makes sense.
yeah, yeah. We're not, we don't. What's that old cliche? Don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Well, yeah, it's you want to have some dry gunpowder. You want to be able to make a few waves. So if you're putting some of your assets in a CD, you might think, gosh, it's really not growing.
Yeah, two
Like I
percent,
want everything in
3.
the market.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if the market's flat for the next 10 years? The way to get around that is to have some assets in a fixed account or in a protected account or in something that's less risky. So when the markets go down, you can buy the dips. You want to buy the dips along the way. Your next 10, 15, 20 years of retirement savings, I think, has more to do with strategy and less to do with just blindly putting money in the market and hope it works out. People win because of strategy, about a system. It's always about systems. Uh, we have this expression, you've heard it to exhaustion, but we follow systems, not sentiment. What's your system of growth? That's I think that's really what is your system.
Okay.
We have the bear market protocol. Part of that system is to have some assets that are protected so you can buy the dips. That accelerates your growth moving forward.
So it may be that this person who's 50 and hasn't started saving, even if they had started saving at 25 years old, maybe their strategy shouldn't be much different either way. It sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, who's going to say, I've saved enough. I want to get lazy with my money and just whatever happens, happens. That's laziness. That's pretty sad. That's like I think of the biblical parable of the talents.
Oh, yeah.
You're gonna bury your talent, get chastised later. Well, you got, what was it, 5 talents, you make it in 10 or 2 to 4, whatever the numbers were. If you have resources, if you have assets, be a good steward over it. Be mindful about the investments. Don't get lazy. Don't get comfortable for it. Jeez. Um, Now, there's one other part that's really interesting here. Okay. Because this person is starting over, or I guess starting to begin with,
Yeah.
they have the opportunity to do more deliberate tax planning.
Mm.
And what I mean is, what income do they want when they retire? How are they going to take it? What if the first 5 years of their retirement, so they're gonna try and retire at 60 years old. They only need, let's say, 40,000 of income a year. Okay, and the first 5 years they're gonna spend down brokerage funds.
Okay.
Well, 40,000, even if 40,000 was from an IRA, I guess, but 40,000 you could do that tax free
You could
because of
withdraw it tax free.
long-term capital gains.
Uh,
You could structure it in a brokerage account to enjoy long-term capital gains, and that gives you then some room in the standard deduction, assuming that taxes don't change drastically, to then do some IRA to Roth conversions at that point too.
mm-hmm.
You might decide to fund straight to the Roth. You might decide to do all sorts of things. The point being is the person has, in some sense, an opportunity because if they can fund the right buckets in the right way based on a deliberate plan that they've put together, they can become more tax efficient. So it's kind of like asking the question, well, do you want to pay 20% in taxes or 0% in taxes? Well, zero. Well, where you fund is going to matter. And if your income is too high, maybe you delay some of the funding strategies. If the income is within a certain threshold, then maybe you can enjoy some Roth, enjoy some brokerage account, and set it up for long-term capital gains. There's more to do with it. So if you're 50 years old or 51 or 52 or whatever it is, and you're just starting to save, don't lose hope. Just say, here's my opportunity. Let's get very deliberate with it because the more tax efficient you are, the less you need to save. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. It sounds like they wouldn't do much differently, except maybe we could tell them, hey, be sure and take advantage of your catch-up contributions, right? That extra, whatever it is, $1,000 a year.
Yeah.
Take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Beyond that, though, where you're doing your deliberate planning like anybody else would have.
Be very intentional with the decisions that you make with the 401k savings, the matching, all of the resources you have available to you become very deliberate,
Mm.
very intentional.
There's less room for error, I guess.
Less room for error. That's a great way to put it. If you're in that boat, by the way, and you want to work with one of our advisors, you can always go to retireontime.com and click the Discover What's Possible button at the top of the page, where you'll be able to talk with one of our advisors for 30 minutes and explore your lifestyle and legacy potential. We want to help you succeed, whether it's with a one-time plan that you can manage on your own or an ongoing relationship, whatever's right for you. But it all starts with a simple phone call. You can go to retireontime.com. Make sure you like, subscribe to the show. The bigger the show gets, whether you subscribe to it via podcast or on YouTube, the better the resources, the more the content that's there, and the more we can support you through educational means to help you make good, informed decisions. We'll see you in the next episode.